Hey girlies, it's Tammy. Welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, we're doing a highly requested video. I'm going to be talking you guys through my favorite concealers. We have drugstore, we have high-end, and I also have a couple recommendations for dry skin. So if you don't know, I do have very oily skin. Like, give me 2-3 hours, my face can be very dewy, very oily. So I do have to touch up throughout the day, and I do tend to lean towards mattifying products. I do also really like full coverage products, so I'm not really, you know, one of those no makeup type of people. I do like to not look like I'm wearing makeup, but I suppose look like I'm wearing makeup. I am a cake face. I do kind of like the heavy duty full coverage stuff, but I do still want it to be very lightweight underneath my eyes. I don't want it to feel heavy. I don't want it to feel cakey. I kind of want to forget that I'm wearing makeup. So these are very lightweight, but they do dry down and they are full coverage. So if that's something you're interested in, then definitely keep watching. So if you've watched any of my videos before, you probably would have seen these concealers mentioned a few, maybe more than a few times, but we're still going to talk about them because they're my faves. I'm going to go ahead and start with drugstore concealers. So my first one is of course the e.l.f. Camo Concealer. I have been through 2 tubes. This is my second one, and as you can see, it's nearly empty. I love this concealer. It is so full coverage. It dries down matte. Most of these do. They all are full coverage and dry down matte. That's just what I go for. If you have normal combination skin, underneath your eyes doesn't get really oily or anything like that, you can definitely put this on without setting it. I don't feel like it needs setting. It is quite a matte concealer, but very flawless, so smoothing underneath the eyes, and I just absolutely love this. I use the shade Deep Chestnut. Also, if you use it around the face to like conceal, it is so full coverage. It conceals blemishes perfectly, and this concealer is only £5. Like, honestly, you can afford to kind of go through it, because concealer you do kind of go through kind of fast if you're like me anyway and use quite a lot. Very similar formula is the L'Oreal Infallible More Than Concealer. Full coverage, dries down matte, beautiful formula. I use the shade Honey, which is kind of my face shade. I do also have a brighter concealer in the shade Almond, which I use to kind of brighten underneath. I kind of mix the two, but yeah, beautiful formulation. Very similar, but I believe the e.l.f. is cheaper. Another drugstore favorite of mine is the Revolution Conceal and Define concealers. So we have the original Conceal and Define, and then they came out with the Conceal and Define Infinite Concealer, which is 20% more coverage. I did do a side-by-side video, and I do feel like this one has slightly more coverage, but if you're not like super blemished or you don't have really dark under eyes, you can just go with the original one. It is really full coverage and it dries down matte and lasts all day. But if you do find you have, you know, dark scars, pigmentation, dark under eyes, then definitely go with the Infinite because it has more pigment in it, and it also has niacinamide in here, so it is infused with skincare as well. And niacinamide, I believe, does brighten skin over time, so you will kind of get a more even skin tone. I'm not sure of the percentage of niacinamide in here, but the fact that it's in here is like a benefit. And I believe these concealers are £5-6 as well. Really affordable, and they last all day. They won't, like most concealers do crease underneath your eyes. Like, I have one deep crease underneath my eyes that always, like throughout the day, no matter what concealer I'm using, it will kind of become more prominent. But all of the concealers I'm talking about today, like underneath the eyes, when my oils start coming through, they don't separate or go all funny. They sit beautifully throughout the day and last really well. So those are my drugstore favorites. I know other people have other favorites like the Collection Concealer and the Sleek Concealer, and they're good concealers. I still have them in my collection, but they're not my go-to concealer. I've also been trying out the XX Revolution Concealer, which I'm really liking, but I haven't used it enough and I haven't used it on long days for me to say that it's definitely my favorite. So I'm just talking about tried and true favorites today. Now, moving on to more higher end concealers, my ultimate favorite, if I could only keep one high-end concealer, it would definitely be this one, and it's the Jouer Essential High Coverage Concealer. Guys, this is beautiful underneath the eyes. It doesn't dry down super fast, but it does dry down to a kind of soft demi matte finish, so it does last really well on people with oily skin like me, but it doesn't dry out the under eyes if you do have more normal dry skin. It is infused with hyaluronic acid, so it does kind of retain its moisture. It does not like dry out the skin like I said, but it does definitely dry down slightly, which I like. The coverage on this concealer is insane. Like, literally you can put the smallest amount and it will definitely cover and brighten underneath your eyes. I don't have a shade to use on my face, so I don't really use it on blemishes, but underneath my eyes it sits beautifully. It just melts into the skin. Another favorite of mine, this is kind of like new 2020 favorite, so I mean, kind of, you know, I've been using it for the past half of this year. This is the Urban Decay Stay Naked Correcting Concealer. This beautiful coverage, once again, dries down, which I absolutely love. I don't like concealers that stay like wet and moist underneath the eyes. I feel like it just makes me pack on more powder, and then, you know, it just looks a bit bit cakey, but the more matte the actual formula is, it means I use less powder underneath my eyes and it's more lightweight and less cakey. So I mean, the more mattifying the product is, the more better for me. More better, that is terrible English. So yeah, Urban Decay killed it with this concealer as well. Now next I'm going to talk about the cult favorite kind of Tarte Shape Tape. I know everyone used to love this back in the days, and some people have gone off it because they know there's more options out there, but I feel like if you are oily skin and you do like full coverage, this is worth the hype. It's full coverage, it dries down, I mean everything an oily skin type would want. However, if you do have dry skin, it could cling to dry patches underneath your eyes, similar to the e.l.f. concealer and the Revolution concealer. That's why I personally wouldn't recommend these concealers for dry skin types, especially if you have dry patches, just because they do dry down and that mattifying effect to the concealer can cling to dry patches. But if you do have more combo oily skin, this is a beautiful concealer. It is super full coverage, like you need the smallest amount, and because it's such a big concealer, how much do you get in here? 10 milliliters. It will last you ages. However, there is a dupe, the Nabla, what is this called? Close Up Stay Full Smooth concealer. What's that mean? I think they mean long wear, full coverage, smooth finish. Anyways, this Close Up concealer by Nabla is very, very similar to the Tarte one. It might be the packaging giving me similar vibes, but the formula, as far as I can like tell, is very, very similar to the Tarte one. Super full coverage, so lightweight on the face though. It doesn't feel heavy or cakey. It sits like melts into the face beautifully. I honestly love this formula. I definitely agree with what they say about this concealer with long wearing, full coverage and smooth finish. It is a beautiful concealer, and I believe it's £15 on Beauty Bay. Underneath my eyes I use the shade Amber, but I also have a darker shade for my face in the shade Almond, and oh my god guys, honestly definitely check these out. So those are all of my combo oily skin recommendations. If you require long lasting, full coverage, dry down concealers, you will absolutely love all of these concealers. These are my top tier, like top favorite. If I use these, or if I just had one of these for the rest of my life, I would be happy. Mostly the e.l.f. concealer and the Jouer. If I only had to live the rest of my life with those concealers, I would just be happy. I would be happy, you know. Now I don't keep many hydrating concealers in my collection. Usually if I try it and it's not a dry down concealer, it goes straight into my like give to friends and family pile, because it's just not something I'm going to gravitate towards, especially with all of these concealers that I do actually really like. However, there are a couple hydrating concealers that I have kept in my collection, like because they have really nice coverage and they don't go all crazy underneath my eyes once my oils start coming through. They're not dry down concealers, so they can get a little bit wet, a little bit oily underneath my eyes. This area right directly underneath my eyes never gets like oily, but this area here kind of does. So yeah, so the first one I'm going to start with is the Too Faced Born This Way concealer. This is definitely a more hydrating concealer. However, the coverage on this is beautiful. I would typically, ooh, it nearly hit me in the face there. I would typically use this on days that I'm not going like out for long. If I just have errands to run, or I'm just filming, or I'm just like around the house and I want a little bit of, you know, boop boop underneath the eyes, this would be a good concealer. But on days that I have long days, you know, like you're out of the house from 9 to 5, I personally wouldn't go for this, just because I know it doesn't last really well on my oily skin. Now when I say it doesn't last, I don't mean like it breaks up and separates and goes weird. It does not do that, which is why it's still in my collection. However, it does go very, very dewy on me. I think one day I paired the Too Faced Born This Way foundation with this concealer, went out, you know, did my day, came home, and my face was literally an oil. You could fry an egg on my face. So I mean, these products are definitely very hydrating. It doesn't dry down. It stays very wet and moist underneath the eye. So if you do have dry patches, this kind of glides over it. It is very smooth. And of course there are people with oily skin that do like this concealer. I mean, it's all about preference, guys. Do you know what I mean? Some people are oily skin and love the oily look or the dewy look. I just really, really prefer a mattifying look. So that's just all my preference. Next we have the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer, a cult favorite, and this is definitely very creamy, very radiant, very hydrating. So I mean, the name for this concealer is perfect. The coverage is decent. I find that it is pretty full. The only thing that I don't like about this concealer is the size of the doe foot. I feel like it doesn't pick up enough product. It's very tiny. You have to kind of dip, just to get one eye done, you know, so I wish the doe foot was a little bit better or a little bit bigger. But of course this concealer was created back in the days before big doe foots were a thing, do you know what I mean? So I totally understand why the doe foot is smaller, because at the time all of the concealer doe foots were small. But yeah, this has beautiful coverage underneath the eyes. If you have dry skin, I feel like you will absolutely love this. I don't gravitate towards it nowadays just because I have so many dry down concealers that I do love. Now similarly to the NARS Radiant in terms of not drying down, staying very hydrating and moist underneath the eyes, is the Juvia's Place concealer. What is this called? I can't remember what this concealer is called and it doesn't say it on the tube, but I feel like it's the Magic Concealer or something like that. Now they came out with a foundation at the same time, and the foundation is one of my favorites. It dries down, it's full coverage, it's a beautiful foundation. However, the concealer is very moisturizing, so but it also is full coverage, but it just seems to be very kind of opposite of the foundation that they came out with. I don't know if it's because they wanted like a matte base and then you top it with a hydrating concealer and you kind of get the best of both worlds, but I wish this was matte. I wish this concealer was dry down, especially because like the coverage is amazing. It has a big doe foot that applies tons of product. The colors, they have tons of shades in this concealer line. I just wish the formula was a little bit more like the Magic foundation that they came out with, but this is just so hydrating and moisturizing underneath my eyes. Even if I bake with this, I still kind of get like oily on my face, so this is definitely not my go-to. And it does kind of remind me of the Too Faced Born This Way now that I think about it. It's very moisturizing and hydrating, so if you do like a hydrating concealer for my normal to dry girlies, this is a good option and affordable. I'm so annoyed that they don't stock it on Beauty Bay. Like they stock every single Juvia's Place palette on Beauty Bay, but they don't stock the foundation or the concealer, none of the base products. I don't know why, because that foundation is running out and I need a backup, so I need them to stock in the UK please. But if you are in the USA, they do stock this in Ulta, so you can definitely check that out, and I think they're like $12 or something like that, really affordable, and you get tons of product in here. Last but not least, we have the Maybelline Instant Age Rewinder, or what is this called? Instant Anti-Age Eraser Concealer. I use the shade Caramel, and this is literally empty. I've got the smallest tiniest bit down there. This concealer is rather hydrating but not overly dewy like the Juvia's Place one. I feel like this one, once I set it, it can kind of go throughout the day without touch-ups. This one is more like a high medium coverage, you know, those days that you want to do like no makeup or very light makeup, this would be great because it's not super full coverage. So this one's kind of like a middle of the road type of concealer. It doesn't dry down matte, but it's not super hydrating underneath my eyes either. I feel like this is such a good concealer to reach for on like the everyday basis, you know, when I'm not filming and I'm not really doing anything much, I'm just kind of around and I want to look a bit flawless, you know, a bit put together, you know, this would be a great concealer because it doesn't really look heavy or like feel heavy on the face, but it also isn't super dewy and like wet. But I would still more recommend it for normal to dry skin, maybe even combo as well, but super oily like me, it's just not the most long lasting, not the best option out there. And those are all of the concealers that I wanted to talk to you guys about today. These are like my top favorites, definitely stand by. Like I know if I put these on my face, I'm gonna be good for the day. I do have other concealers. I'm looking at my whole drawer of concealers over here. I have tons of concealers, but when I sit down to film my makeup and I'm like, what do I want to use today, these are most likely the ones that I always go for. So maybe I should give the others a bit of a try, like maybe I might find some new favorites, but usually these are the ones that I absolutely love and go for. So yeah, let me know your favorite concealer down in the comment section. Please give this video a thumbs up and let me know what other videos you want to see from me, and I'll catch you guys in my next one. Take care. Bye.